During the 2019 college football season, the Tennessee Volunteers played 13 games between August 31st and January 2nd. Of those 13, all except one was played on a Saturday, and each game had at least a week break between them. It's a typical SEC football schedule. You got your games against every team in your division, a few from the other division, and a few from outside your conference. And then you add in a bowl game, and boom, perfect schedule. So let's look at the 2019 Tennessee Volunteers schedule just to give a little bit of insight to what I'm talking about. So they started the season with 3 non-conference games. They played Georgia State, BYU, and Chattanooga, all in Knoxville. Georgia State, in a huge upset, beat the Vols 30-38. They followed that up with a loss in double overtime to BYU, 26-29, and then finally spanked Chattanooga 45-0. Then they got into their conference games. They played Florida in Gainesville. They played Georgia in Knoxville. That's a division rival there. Mississippi State, that's West versus East, so out of division. And then Bama, that's also out of division. Then they played South Carolina. That's another SEC East opponent. They're back in their division. Then they played UAB, a non-con. Kentucky in the division, Missouri in their division, and then they ended the season with Vanderbilt, also in their division. Now then they qualified for a bowl game, and they wound up playing in the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, and they wound up beating Indiana 23-22 on January 2nd, which was, interestingly enough, a Thursday. So, in total, they had 4 non-conference games. They had 3 games against teams from the SEC West, so outside of their division. And then they had the rest of their schedule, minus the bowl game, against teams in the SEC East, which is, of course, their division. Perfect schedule when you're looking at Tennessee. It is the best way of showcasing how college football should be scheduled. Now, sometimes you'll see teams play on Thursday in the regular season, and even the MAC will sometimes later in the season play on Wednesday, and they have that marquee hashtag Wednesday Night Maction. But they won't play again for at least another week. And this whole setup ensures that players are well rested, injuries are kept to a minimum, and everything is as hunky-dory as it can be. What this means is that the least amount of days spent between a game and another game is 5. Saturday to Thursday, 5 days. Now, the number 5 for the Tennessee Volunteers is wholly insignificant, aside from if your name is Josh Palmer and you're a wide receiver from Canada and you're wearing that number for the 2020 season. Then 5's pretty important. You might want to remember that number. But on top of a mountain, 2.5 hours southwest of Knoxville, the number 5 is legendary. Because in 1899, the team from that mountain played 5 games in 6 days. And on the 7th day, they rested. This is the story of the greatest team in the history of college football. Atop 13,000 acres of land on Monteagle Mountain sits a small private Episcopal university. Since it's part of the Cumberland Plateau, Monteagle Mountain is not technically a mountain, but the school on this faux mountaintop has retained its mountain identity. They've called the school on the mountaintop since the very earliest days of its existence. Now, the university was founded by a group of Episcopal bishops and is famous for its School of Theology, a seminary that has for years now, educated and prepared priests to enter in and serve different Episcopal churches. It's a beautiful campus, rich history, great landscape. This mountain vibe is beautiful when the sun sets. You get great colors all over the place, and in the winter you get a very pretty snowfall. The school also has a football team who first started playing in 1891. They were known then, as they are now, as the Tigers, and they currently play in the NCAA's Division III. Hold on a second. How the hell does a Division III team get to have the title of greatest ever? I mean, this Division III. These guys couldn't even hold a candle to North Dakota State, much less Bama. What gives them any credence for this greatest of all time title? Well, to find that out, we need to go back in time to when football was in its very infancy. Football in the 1800s, almost nothing like it is today. Forward pass, just being developed, wasn't even legal yet. Much of the play styles like a screwed up version of rugby that got tossed into a blender and made into this bastardized version of itself. Half the rules we have today did not even exist. There was no reviews, the yardage to go and the down markers, right? The things that help you figure out how much more you need to get for a first down. Those were not posted on any scoreboard, so you kind of just had to push until the ref said okay. Teams would punt before fourth down. A lot of times they punt on first down. The turnovers back then were not as impactful as a turnover today. I mean, people fumbled all the time, mostly because they were playing rugby-esque, so lots of lateral passes. Fumbles tended to happen. Or they played on these muddy surfaces, they weren't cleaning the balls, the ball was slick, and every play is a run play, and every play you're getting hit at the line, at some point the ball's going to pop out. Another weird thing that they did, a lot of times, the team who was scored on would kick the ball off to the team that scored. So if you scored a touchdown, you were basically guaranteed a second possession. Now remember, as I said at the beginning of the video, the number 5 is significant to our story. In 1899, a touchdown was worth 5 points. Now, it doesn't seem a lot, but get ready for this, brace yourself. A field goal was also worth 5 points. Yeah, so you get the same amount for a touchdown and a field goal. Now, these field goals are nothing like what we have today, where you have someone gets snapped the ball, usually the backup quarterback who's the holder, will get snapped the ball, and the kicker puts it through the uprights. These were very much similar to penalty kicks in rugby, where if a foul was committed, the player would usually get X amount of yards and then be given a free kick, which is like a drop kick. And they could either do a short drop kick and try to run with it themselves, like you'll see in rugby, or they could go with a verified drop kick and just put the thing through the uprights for 5. Of course, if you do that, you lose the opportunity for the extra point conversion. Just like in football, in rugby, once you score a touchdown, which they call a try, you get an extra point conversion. So that was something that football copied from rugby, and that, yes, it was 5 points for a touchdown. You did have the opportunity for 6. Luckily, safeties are still 2 points, so if you're looking for something that's like somewhat reminiscent of today's football, there's that for you. So if you need a nugget to hold on to, I present you that nugget. Since football was first introduced in the Northeast, you also had a very different landscape of power. Of course, today we think football powers of Bama, Auburn, Texas A&M, UT, LSU, of course, winning the national championship, Clemson, Florida State. I mean, these teams, the one thing they all have in common besides being good at football is they are all in the South. Well, when football was first introduced and being developed and being spread, it started in the Northeast. Most famously, you had the first intercollegiate game being between Rutgers and Princeton. So, naturally, teams that get the game first are going to be better at the game. So, your Rutgers, your Ivy League schools, University of Chicago, those teams back in the 1800s were powerhouses. And it was Northeast or nothing if you were playing football. Ivy League reigned supreme. Furthermore, if you take a look at the scores from 1899, you'll find a sport that has almost zero true competition. Games were usually blowouts. Losing team was almost always shut out. As I mentioned before, Ivies reigned supreme. So unless it was Ivy versus Ivy, it was usually the Ivy League team in a shutout winning. You'd think that would mean with all these blowouts that 1800s football would be just totally non-existent in terms of a fan culture. And you would be completely wrong, because crowds showed up in droves. A combination of school spirit, love of the game, general camaraderie, and football games, much like other sports, and just like sports today, were a great space to socialize and meet people. The South didn't get their hands on collegiate football till the tail end of the 1800s. And when they did get it, the South, this is the South, between the Civil War and World War I. So very, very low income, still impoverished, still, reeling from the effects of Reconstruction. Also, it's important to note whenever we talk about the South this time, still very racist. Black people were not allowed to go to games, play in games, any of that. So still very much the stain of the antebellum South, even after Reconstruction, even today. Racism has not gone away, and it certainly wasn't gone in any way in the 1890s. In 1894, the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Association was formed. The SIAA was home to some schools you probably know well. You had Bama, Auburn, Clemson, Georgia, LSU, Texas, UNC, Georgia Tech. All these schools who dominate the SEC and the ACC today, if they're in one of those two big Power 5 conferences, they were probably in the SIAA. And chances are they were pretty good. Auburn was a great SIAA powerhouse. Georgia Tech ruled the conference for quite some time. Texas was doing well. Heck, even Tulane was in there with a shout. And amongst these titans of the game that we think of today whenever we think of the words college football was Sewanee.